Hey guys, so I wanted to try something a little different this week. I didn't really have a whole lot to show in my tanks, but still wanted to make a video to put out. So I decided I'm going to talk about fertilizers a little bit. So I first got into planted tanks, doing dirted tanks, and it's still what I prefer. I've had a lot of luck with it in the past. So I'm going to keep doing it until it doesn't work for me. Um, and I had such success in the past that I didn't fertilize. I still had a jungle of dwarf sage, and I had swords growing out my ears. Everything worked really, really well. But I've moved since those tanks, and the water structure is a little different, which is causing my plants not to do so well, in my opinion. I looked at the water structure from the supply district or whatever it's called from where I lived and where I am now. They're a little different, so I've been working on fertilizing just to see what I need to do, what I'm missing. So I just started with the basics, looking at macronutrients. Now, macronutrients are the nutrients that plants need in bulk, essentially. And the primary ones that most people are going to talk about are nitrogen, potassium, and phosphates or phosphorus. And the micronutrients are those that plants don't need in such high quantities, and those are like boron, manganese, and things like that. So I started with an all-in-one from Aquarium Co-op Easy Green, and I'm going to try and get this to focus so y'all can see what's in there. So close, but not that close. Maybe if I back up a little bit. Aha, there we go. So you can see those first three of the macros that we were talking about, followed by some micros later on that list. So what they recommend for dosing is 1 pump per 10 gallons, dose once a week for low light tanks, twice a week for medium light tanks. So the process that I've been taking is dose with the recommended amount, monitor for 2 weeks, and if I'm not seeing what I expect or want to see, I increase my dose. So I started, since I'm working with a 20-gallon tank, I started with 2 pumps once a week. Saw a little bit of growth, but not much. So after that 2-week mark, I went to 2 dosings within a week, and then I started seeing some relatively good results, but I plateaued relatively quickly. I think before that 2-week mark, I plateaued. So I've gotten to where I'm dosing 3 times a week now, and I've already plateaued again. So I'm doing, instead of 2 pumps 3 times a week, I'm doing 3 pumps 3 times a week. So I'm just now starting that. So I'm going to watch it for 2 weeks, just like I've been doing, and see what happens. And the reason why I'm doing that incrementally is I don't want to put so much fertilizer in there all at once that I have a huge algae bloom. And then I have the green stringy algae or the blotch algae, or even like a blue-green, or not blue-green, a green water bloom in my tank, because that just could potentially start a whole other issue that's going to take a lot more effort to resolve than if I go up incrementally. So since I've done that, I'm sitting here thinking, why isn't this working? Why can I not get my plants to grow? It's an all-in-one. It should have everything. I don't think that there is anything wrong with this product. I would readily buy it again, have no issues with this fertilizer. What I think is going on is there is just one thing that my plants need a little bit more of, just a little bit. So the things that I've been seeing are slow growth and pinholes. So from the research that I've done, slow growth suggests nitrogen issues. So I got some flourish nitrogen. The issue that I had here, every time I dose this, I get a huge bacteria bloom. And then it doesn't just last for a couple of days or a week. It's almost 2 weeks. And my tank would just look terrible for 2 weeks. And not a big fan of that. So if you've really dialed it down and you think that the nitrogen is your limiting factor on your plants, what I would recommend is, instead of doing the full dose that they recommend, I'd start with half. Because if, just like what I was saying with the fertilizers and algae bloom, if you can increase this in small amounts incrementally, that may help prevent or inhibit that bacteria bloom. So Again, not there's anything wrong with this product. I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. Just not what my plants, I think, really need based off what I've seen using it. Because I would dose it, bacteria bloom, but didn't see a huge increase in my plants like I was hoping for, thinking this was the one thing they were missing. All that being said, going back to the incremental increase in the fertilizer, what could be happening is I'm putting too much of this in, even though it's the recommended dose, and then the bacteria is consuming it before the plants could. I don't know that that's happening, but since that bloom happens so quickly and lasts so long, that could potentially be the issue that I'm battling. But since it's happened so many times, I don't think nitrogen is my issue at this point. So the pinholes suggest to me that phosphorus is potentially my issue. So what I've done is I've ordered phosphorus, potassium, trace elements, and one other of the Flourish line fertilizers, so I can finally sit down and narrow down what's going. I'm hoping it's only one of those things that I'm missing. I'm kind of leaning toward potassium at this point. But I'm going to start dosing at that recommended amount and then watch it for 2 weeks. And if I need to increase it, I will, so on and so forth. Just like I've done with, just like I was saying with the regular fertilizer, it's worked really well for me in the past, that method being. So I'm going to finally narrow down what's been going on with that tank and why I'm getting slow growth and the pinholes. So I'll report back with how that works and kind of fill y'all in on what's been going on. But on a side note, I have some Ludwigia repens in that tank, so I did put some extra clay in my substrate, which the substrate's a mix of some fluorite from a previous tank, sand, and some pea gravel that all just kind of got mixed together in a bucket along the way in between moving. So that Ludwigia, once I started dosing more, it started growing and doing relatively well. It's still extremely slow growth. It's probably the slowest thing I have in there, even slower than the Crip at this point. But the leaves are just green on it. And even though I've got that clay in there, like I was talking about in the substrate, I can't really seem to get any red colors out of it. So I started dosing iron, doing the same thing, dosing the recommended for a couple of weeks, and then I'm increasing it from there. Now what I've been dosing it with, instead of using the cap, is this coral feeder from when I had a saltwater tank, and it's worked really, really well for me. What I've figured out is one bulb, when I'll squeeze it, put it in, let go, and the suction there brings it up to about there, going off memory, and that gives me one dose, and that's been super easy instead of trying to use this cap and then spilling it everywhere and getting stains on it like you see on the bottle, if I can coordinate. So I'm going to keep working on that. When I first started doing the iron dosing, I got a minimal increase in the red, but then after 2 weeks, it's almost like the plant grew, plateaued, and I don't have any red. It's just all green. So I'm going to keep increasing my iron and working through that process. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about is I've got some boxes that I built outside for little ponds. I'm growing some native stuff out there, just want to build some stock and see how it goes. So I've been using plastic pots, but I hate plastic pots because when they break, all I can do is throw them away. They're completely useless and ends up sitting in the landfill for however long. So I got some peat pots. These are usually used for terrestrial landscape type plants, but I'm going to test these out and see how long they'll sit and last in the water with that plant. So what I think is going to end up happening is the roots are going to grow out the sides and break down this pot quicker than I'd like it to be. But I would rather test it than just assume and be wrong. So that'll be something I'll show y'all more of in the coming weeks or so. So I hope that this was helpful for somebody, and I hope that this format wasn't too awkward. If you like it, awesome. If you don't like it, sorry, it is what it is. If y'all have any questions or recommendations for me based off what I've been talking about here with my plant issues, let me know in the comments. I would love to get some feedback to know what y'all think I could be doing better, because I'm learning just like everybody else. So with that being said, I'll see y'all next time.